So we're doing absolute value and radicals, solving equations. So absolute value is the two vertical lines, yeah? And all it means is you make what's on the inside positive. So what's the answer here?
-3 or.
Ooh, there's two answers, right? X could be 3 or X could be -3. So that's an important thing to know as we go forward, because as these absolute values get harder, knowing that there's two answers is going to help us figure out how to solve the ones that are more complex than absolute value of X equals 3. That one hopefully wasn't too bad. Oh, look at that. Here we go. So if we think about that last example, absolute value of X equals 3, and we got X equals 3 or -3, right? Which is to say we basically just did that, right? So same thing over here. What we're going to do is we're going to set up two equations where either x plus 1 equals 5 or x plus 1 equals -5. Because this, what's inside, equals the plus or minus of that. That's what we showed with the last example. Subtract 1, x equals 4. Subtract 1, x equals -6. It's probably a good idea to check your answer. 4 plus 1 is 5, square root value. Absolute value of 5 is 5, and then for -6 plus 1 is -5, and absolute value is +5. Yeah? For square root of x, it is 4, but to show how we do that, what would we do?
Square each.
Hey! Because those are operations and they're inverse operations, like multiply, divide, add, subtract. Here we'd get x equals 4. Here, same thing, right? Square both sides. So we get x plus 1 equals 4. Subtract 1 from both sides. X equals 3. Don't worry, your homework will be harder than this.
Okay.
But we got to do the easy stuff to set you up of like why and what and where is happening. See, look, it's already getting harder. So try this one. So on this one, you got to be careful when you square both sides to start. If you start there, which I would recommend not starting there.
Oh, subtract 2 from both sides.
Add 2 to both sides.
Oh, no.
But if you do it like this, you should not ever, never, will ever get that. That is cheater. Because remember when we had like this, x plus 2 squared, and we had to FOIL everything out? You'd have to do that here as well. So that's something you need to be aware of, that you want to try and do your best to get the square root by itself before you square both sides. I wish it was that easy. So we'll add 2 to both sides. So we get square root of x plus 1 equals 5, and then you square both sides. X plus 1 equals 25. Subtract 1. x equals 24. It was a good job of realizing that the answer you had, whatever it was, didn't make sense. That's a skill a lot of kids don't have. Of like yeah.
0.23.
Yeah, if you plug 4 and you're nowhere close to 3 or whatever you had. I get that. But there's a lot of kids like, oh, there's my answer. And they just move on with their lives.
Sometimes it's easier. Now you have to cube it.
Hey. You'll cube both sides.
Can you not do the cube root of a negative though?
Well, so cube root means what number times itself 3 times equals that, right? So you could have -2 times -2 times -2, so it's the same number 3 times.
I thought you couldn't take the square root of a
You
negative.
can't, but is this a square root or a cube root?
Cube, well then what makes a difference?
What I just showed.
Negative times a negative times a negative equals a negative, whereas a negative times a negative equals a positive.
So you can get positive and negative on the odd roots because you can have all of them positive or all of them that, like, it'll get you to that same thing. But for even roots, you can't do it for a negative. We good on that?
Yeah.
It's getting more exciting.
Bigger numbers.
So as you see, there's a 4th root here, so that means we're going to do to the 4th power on both sides. We get 2x plus 41 equals 9, 27, 81. Subtract 41 from both sides. 2x equals 40. Divide both sides by 2. X equals 20. If you plug it in, which we'll talk about here in a second, that you should plug every one of these in always, because we'll show that there's times where you get an extraneous solution, which means it doesn't work. But it's always good to check, and here you would get to work. Oh, look, extraneous solutions. So on this one, so you got to be a little bit careful of how you're doing all of this. Just make sure you're following good math practices. So we're going to square both sides, because if we add 2 to the other side, it's still going to have messiness. I mean, it would probably be easier to work with if we added 2 to the other side, but whatever. We're in pre-calc. We can handle it. That's what we say through our tears. So the left side would be, well, here. That would become 2x minus 1 minus 2, 2x minus 1 minus 2. And on the right side, we're left with positive x. Right?
Yes, I cheated though.
I know. So then we've got 2x minus 1 minus 4 square root of 2x minus 1 plus 4 equals x.
Why is the second one still square rooted?
Because that's from the O and the I, the outside
Oh,
and the inside. So we're going to have to square again here in a moment.
So is a 4 attached to the...
It is. So let's move on. We're going to move this, this, and this over. So we'll have 4, 2x minus 1. And then we'd have negative x minus 3.
Would it be -1? Oh, bro, what am I typing? Yeah.
I combined those together.
Square both sides.
Divide by... Yeah, we could square both sides. That might make things a little cleaner. It's fine.
So we don't have to divide it by 4.
And you'll just have to divide by 16 later. I guess not. And then you'd get x squared plus 6x plus 9.
Sure.
Hey, look at that, the factors. You guys should be excited when that factors.
I'm very excited.
Are we good so far?
Mhm.
Okay. Then you plug both of those in. To check to see if they work. So for 25, we get 2 times 25 minus 1.
49.
Oops, I should not put that in the parentheses. There we go. Minus 2 equals negative square root 25. So we get 7 minus 2 equals negative 5. 5 equals negative 5, which is false.
7 minus 2 isn't negative. Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
negative.
I know it's not.
Like,
So 25 doesn't work if you plug 1 in. That does work.
Yay.
Right, because 2 times 1 is 1, minus 1 is 1, square root of 1 is 1, 1 minus 2 is negative 1. And on the right side, square root of 1 is 1 and make it negative.
I just have to remember to not just, because before I just negative x minus 3.
So yeah, always make sure you're writing these things out so that you remember to FOIL, not to do the cheater way. And the cheater way in this doesn't actually work, whereas the cheater way in like the 24 game works, right? Here, cheater way is cheating. This one, I don't think you have to do a whole lot of work on, because what's the definition of an absolute value?
can't be negative.
And what makes everything positive.
Makes everything positive. Is there any way to get a negative number when there's only an absolute value on the left side? No. So no solutions. There's nothing you can plug in to make that work. Okay.